Hi, I'm Roy Coughlan, and I'm the creator of the podcast. You can find everything about me and the 5 podcasts on bio.link/podcaster, and you'll find it in the QR code there. I'd also like to thank my sponsors. If you or someone you know is struggling with anxiety and want to know how to be 100% anxiety free in 6 weeks without therapy or drugs, Daniel Packard Anxiety Solution Program Company offers a 6 weeks system that permanently solves anxiety at an astounding 90% success rate. People who join the program only pay at the end once they have clear, measurable results. If you're interested in learning more, go to permanentanxietysolutions.com, where you can book a free consultation with Daniel. Do you have high blood pressure and want to get off the meds? Doctors are amazed at what Zona Plus can do. Get a $50 discount with my code ROY. Go to zona.com/discount/ROY, and you see the QR code for all my sponsors down at the end. Quality Polish manufacturer of metal products for telecommunication and workshop equipment and other metals. If you'd like a brochure, you see it in the QR code, and you just let us know if you would like a quotation shipped internationally and very competitive rates. I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast.
Welcome to the Meditation Podcast. You can find all our episodes on meditationpodcast.org. My guest today, she's the founder of Relating Academy, a collection of results-focused relating coaches that help entrepreneurs improve any relationship. She's an author as well, and she's from Kiev in the Ukraine, but living in Cape Town, Africa. Please welcome Anna Shilina.
Thank you, Roy. I'm so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to chatting with you for a while, and it's an absolute honor. So I'm excited for this conversation.
No, I'm looking forward to it as well. So I suppose let's start off with kind of your own kind of journey along. I know you do breathwork, meditation, everything, but your whole kind of journey to what you're doing at the moment.
Right. So starting from the end, I guess. Yeah. I have founded
You were born.
I was born once upon a time in a land far, far away. So about a decade ago, I sold my security business where I had like over 1,000 people work for me, and it was like a high stress, very type A. Everything was about deals and money and like very business focused. And after I sold that, I kind of like swung the other way into everything meditation and spirituality and breath work, and lived in Bali for 5 years and like practiced almost every modality that you could kind of like throw at me at the time. So I had this like one foot in both worlds, one foot in like the very business world and one foot in like the very spiritual world. And as time, and I was coaching business for about 8 years, business mindset, helping people make money, close deals and all that. But for me, like something felt that wasn't like, it was missing, like money, like the business thing wasn't, people wanted it, but time and time again, I'd help entrepreneurs reach their goals, and their fulfillment was very, very short-lived. And I was like, this can't be it, you know? And eventually, through my own path and with like plant medicine and many, many hours of meditation, it came to really the crux of life is relating. And whether it's like relating with your business and relating with finances and money and success, relating with your purpose, a lot of people expect to have a purpose or a passion without building a relationship with it. You know, they kind of expect it to just like show up and be there, but it's like how you're actually nurturing that relationship to obviously relating with other people and yourself and different parts of yourself, your inner child, your older, wiser self, and all of the things in between. And myself and a collective of coaches now host courses that we do online, and it's really fascinating. And the vision of like just a world with better relating, and anywhere we look, we kind of like need that. And I'm very excited to be part of this vision.
Brilliant. And like you mentioned previously, you had like 1,000 employees. I know from being an entrepreneur and also working for people, having over 200 under me, and directly when I was a business, I went up to about 15. But you have to be like an agony aunt with this, and I think you learned a lot from relationships by actually being an employer. But that's a hard, like I don't think people realize with that number how difficult that is.
Yeah, it definitely gives you a lot of insight into lots of different people, and also the business being security, lots of like blue collar workers, if you call them that. I'm not sure what the correct term is for that, but getting exposed to lots of people's needs and desires and helping them achieve their dreams, like dreams and goals, and making sure that they're aligned with like the company's goals and visions. And yeah, it was really beautiful to see when I did leave the business and sold it, how touched people were by the way I got to interact with them and lead them, and what kind of like legacy I got to leave. And even now, the company is still is continuing. And when sometimes I visit the sites and some of the buildings that I had signed as my clients, like almost a decade ago, and the guards are still there and they still remember you, and they still kind of like, so it's really incredible just what kind of like impact that you can make when you are conscious and conscientious of the type of relationships that you want to have and want to build.
Well, so you mentioned plant medicine. Is that ayahuasca, or what was your journey on that?
Ayahuasca was the first one. I've tried them, most of them. So ayahuasca, did maybe like 10 or 11 of those. A hero's journey with psilocybin, so the big 5 grams of psilocybin, and then I've done about 4 iboga as well, iboga ceremonies as well. So I've done a few different ones.
Well, I don't know anything about the second 2. So, but say 11 ayahuascas, because like I've heard different stories. I mean, I haven't done it myself, but I know people that have done a lot. I know people that have even taught it, that I've had on the show as well, and people get different kind of journeys from it. Have you ever had a bad trip, or what was the reasoning behind going, doing it the second and further on?
The first, especially with ayahuasca, the first one was the best, the most beautiful one. And I almost feel like tricked a little bit, because after that, almost every journey has been incredibly difficult. And the motivation, because the medicine, for me at least, I guess maybe it's not for everybody, but for me, it's incredibly difficult. It's not fun. It's not like a joyride or a walk in the park. It's incredibly, incredibly challenging. And anytime I've gone, I've had a very like deep thing that I wanted to shift, I guess. So for example, at one stage about 4 or 5 years ago, I had depression for like 6 months and I could barely get out of bed. I'd get out of bed once a day to eat and walk around a little bit and then get back to bed. And after like 4 or 5 months, I was like desperate to shift this. And the one thing that I could like think of, I was like, well, even though it's so difficult, the one thing that I can think that might help me was ayahuasca, and it did. It shifted it.
And the second thing that you done then, after the ayahuasca, what was the second thing you mentioned?
The hero's dose of psilocybin. That was probably the most difficult night of my life. It was, you know how they say with trauma, you forget it if it's that traumatic. It was so traumatic that I actually don't remember it. And I know it's different for different people. So for everyone, like they have their medicine. My favorite one out of those 3, and the 4th one that I've done also is San Pedro. My favorite one is iboga, which is the one that I've been working with like lately. I did like 4 ceremonies in a year last year. And so yeah, so I guess I kept on like seeking and searching the best medicine for me. And we're so blessed to have access to so many different medicines, especially in this day and age, especially in South Africa. And yeah, so I kept on like searching for the one that like worked best for me. And with iboga, I just found it gave me depth and what I was looking for. So any intention that I'd set for that medicine, whether it was to find my message and my purpose. Even the Relating Academy came from an iboga ceremony, because the message that I got with like all of the different threads of like building businesses and working in hospitality and living with people in close quarters and all the different things that came together, and it's like, oh, it's all relationships and it's all relating. And that was like the birthplace of the Relating Academy. So I'm profoundly grateful for the plant medicines that have led me to even what I'm doing today.
Good. The two things that I've done was I did the toad, and I organized 5 people to do it. 2 said it was the best experience of their life. I just kind of saw a flash of white light and started thinking of my teachers from when I was 4 years of age, remembering who they were and everything. And that was but the other one was DMT. That was in Costa Rica. And there was about 20 of us done that. And that kind of it's like the drips in the mouth. And we had like the facilitators there, but that was beautiful. We done it out in the moonlight. And I remember just thinking, we're all connected, just seeing everything. And from that moment, then I was like, all right, I get it. And for me, that was enough. Like I didn't need to do something else. Like I just felt that was, and it lasts for hours. I remember even like, it's not that you're comatized, because some of these things you can be. It was like, I remember going, to the bathroom and looking into the eyes. It was like looking into the universe. It was like, it was just such a fascinating experience. But I think everybody has to try something, and just once they've got somebody around them that's actually making sure that it's safe, not getting something off some fella on the side of the street. Like you have to be very careful.
Yeah, and the space needs to be sacred and held very well, because you are opening realms to like spiritual dimensions that we, myself as a layman in the space, don't know too much about compared to the shamans. The other thing that kept me going back is the last couple of years, my mom and I have been doing ceremonies together. So that has been a really beautiful intergenerational healing experience. And there's not a lot of like daughter mom or parent child people that I find that do go to these types of circles and ceremonies. So I'm so blessed, and I'm so grateful that my mom is interested in it. And sometimes she feels like going to a ceremony and she'll ask me if I want to come along, and sometimes I'll feel like going to a ceremony and ask her if she wants to join. So her and I have this beautiful healing and plant medicine relationship. And it's fascinating because in my family, so it's my sister and I and my parents, and in my family, it's like split right down the middle, where my mom and I are on the deep end this way, and my dad and my sister are on the deep end on the other side. And they're like, want nothing to do with it. I mean, they're interested. They're not interested, like, don't tell me about it, but it's not their thing at all. And I find that so fascinating in our family dynamic.
I remember my brother lives in Holland, and I was there with my folk, and we were all eating magic mushrooms. It's just a nice experience. It didn't really work. We didn't get the same experience as you would normally, but the fact that they actually were there and we were sitting down munching on the mushrooms, it was kind of a nice experience. It just shows the trust that you have with your family.
Yes, the trust and the vulnerability to go to these like deep places and dark places, sometimes light places, and experience all of humanity, and like not be so surface, which I can be definitely sometimes when I don't feel like being vulnerable. And in these circles, you don't really have a choice. You just are.
So which kind of relationship, since we're talking about parents, sometimes there can be a really toxic parent. And I've seen it in relationships that I have. It like I can't believe I've just been very lucky. I'm very close to my parents, and I've had a fantastic kind of upbringing. But I've seen how terrible it can be. And is it a case when you know that you cut the ties, or do you have to kind of figure out ways of making it work?
That's a really, really beautiful question. So one of the core philosophies that I live by is how all relationships are a mirror, including the toxic and the difficult ones, and those are our greatest teachers. And yeah, for some people, cutting it off is the right move, but there are also lots of ways to alchemize toxicity and difficult relationships as well. And when I say like all relationships are a mirror, like what does that mean? For me, like I love to study like quantum physics and like how the universe is a hologram. There's tons of teachers out there. Like we can't really deny that if we look for it, right? And so to really like take that on responsibly and go like, okay, well, if this is being presented to me in this form, then I can use it as an opportunity to reflect on myself, like where am I being difficult or maybe even toxic, you know? And also when someone says toxic, it's a very blanket statement and it can mean lots of different things. And I encourage, one of the first things I encourage clients to do is start to say or start to think like, instead of generally labeling as toxic, start to label it as misunderstood. Right? It may feel toxic, but it's also something that you may or may not understand. And that starts to soften that that judgment and starts to let in a little bit more compassion. Because like you say, if we're all interrelated and interconnected like we really are, then nothing is on the outside. And I actually can't hurt anything on the outside without hurting myself. So by this person being toxic, the more they are hurting people on the outside, the more they are hurting themselves. So imagine how much pain that person is actually in. And you know, famously the quote like hurt people. Now that doesn't mean you have to tolerate it. All right, that like for some people it's the right move to cut that off and move on completely. I do encourage, if there is a possibility to alchemize and rebuild that relationship or understand it or start to see how it's a reflection in yourself, it's a huge opportunity to discover our shadow sides and sometimes the things, our blind sides, and not blind sides, blind spots, and sometimes the things that we don't want to see about ourselves. Does that make sense?
Oh, no, absolutely. And like sometimes what happens in these situations is there's an addiction, but if you start tracing the layers back, it's usually a few generations. And like you say, having compassion, and a lot of the time they've done 10 times better than their parents did to them. And yet you look at them and you kind of tear them with a brush, but when you realize the upbringing that they've had, so having the compassion, you know, I think is very important.
Having the compassion, and also the more we judge people on the outside, and we judge like that is toxic behavior, that's bad, that's the more we're also judging ourselves. So we are our own harshest critic. And so having compassion for others includes having compassion for yourself, and especially, like I say, the difficult parts or the things that we don't love about ourselves or love about the world, because the world's not all love and light. Humans aren't love and light. It's not all like good behavior and it's all going to be utopia. You know, it takes the full spectrum, including that like difficulty and the toxicity, to build the human condition, the human experience.
And in a relationship, then when one person wants to go and get, like, talk to a coach, go to therapy, get help, but the other is like, no, we don't need it, or it's you're the problem, which it normally kind of it's the mirror effect in that as well. What's your kind of suggestion in them situations?
I love this question because I get it so many times, where one person is leading kind of like the healing, right? Or they want the change, and the other person is either ambivalent or straight up like against it. And so there's a few things that you can do. The first thing is like work on yourself. It's the most important thing, is like for you to be so good within yourself that it doesn't matter if the other person comes along for the healing or not. Like you are creating this wholeness within yourself, right? And that starts from gratitude. And I'll give you an example. I had a friend recently who became like quite emotionally distant, and I was journaling like, oh, I really wish this friend was more like emotionally available to me. And then I journaled on and I was like, well, she's not. So how can I be grateful for exactly how she is? So she has been here for me in this way and that way and that way, which may be completely different from being emotionally available, but she has completely showed up in different ways. And for me to start with gratitude for how it is and not how I wish it to be, because every single person wants to be loved and appreciated for exactly who they are. So if your partner, whoever you're wishing this like change of behavior on, if you keep being like grateful, but like, I'm so grateful for you, but if only you wanted to come to coaching or therapy or whatever, like that doesn't work, because that but is kind of like that, like invalidation, you know. Whereas like if you can get like completely grateful for exactly how they are and find ways that, well, maybe because they don't want to go down the healing path, you have to get more creative with the healing path. Maybe you have to get deeper with your own healing then, you know. And the more you start to own that and own that gratitude, the other person starts to come around. They like, oh, it looks really great where you're at. Like, what are you doing? You know? So it's like, it's the second step after the gratitude is really like embodying the thing that you want from the other person. And that is much harder done than said. Lots of people talk about embodiment and everything, but like really walking the walk and showing up as this like person that's on this journey, and that you're whole and you're not expecting the other person to fulfill you in any way. The other person is going to get more and more attracted because you're going to become more and more magnetic, and your way is going to become more and more magnetic because you are whole and you're not like waiting and anticipating from this other person. And so all that leads to kind of like that detachment, because with any kind of like meditation, manifestation, the more we want something and the more desperate we are for it, what happens? The more it like goes away, right? Because we are separate from it, right? So the more we become one with the kind of, with what we want without needing the other person to fulfill us or give us anything, the more that starts to become a reality.
So I know this is kind of a big one that I've witnessed with friends, and just a lot of times. Sometimes when there's an issue, somebody has maybe a work issue or whatever, the woman brings it to the man and they tell him what's going on, but they just want to be heard. And the man, especially the entrepreneur, wants to come in and this is what you need to do. And then they get annoyed with him for doing that. They don't want them to give him solutions. They just want to listen. How can we kind of make people kind of understand that one?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So it all boils down to needs, right? And having the ability to communicate in the needs, within needs. So as the woman, if my need is to be heard, it's actually my responsibility to communicate that. Saying something like, honey, I know your go-to is solutions and problem solving, and you're so good at that. And I love that about you so much. Like, you're so good at that. Right now, my need is for you to hold space and to just listen. Would that be okay? Right. And so just like it's as a woman, it's my responsibility to communicate that need versus expecting my partner to know what I need and want and like expect from them, you know.
Exactly.
So
Because
really
sometimes if you keep quiet, they're saying you don't care, you're not giving me solutions. When you give solutions, they're giving out you that you should be quiet. So what you've just said is perfect. If somebody kind of tells you at the start, okay, I know the rule book today.
Yeah. Within, you know, everything with coach is like communication is a big part of it. And I love one of my core like books is Nonviolent Communication. Have you read it, Roy?
I haven't, but I've listened to something that you've said, so I've written it down to actually buy that one because yeah, I heard you talking about that.
Yeah, and what I really love about that book is what stands out is to be like loud and proud about your needs as a human being, not like be shy and be like, oh, like I don't want to be a burden and da. The more we parade our needs in a relatively sensitive way, but not in a like arrogant or selfish way, but like, this is my needs, the more other people are going to know what to do with you and going to know how to communicate, how to help you. And we have such a crisis these days of like loneliness and people really like not sharing their needs with other people, that I think that's like really one of the best places we can start.
Very good. And your book then, because one, I think you've written two, but I found one, the Business Tango. Yeah, so you might tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. So that was the first one, the Business Tango. The second one was the Mystery and Magic of Depression. So it's actually linked to, I told you, the 6 months that I had of depression and how I got myself out of that using plant medicine. So for anyone who doesn't want to go the traditional route. And then the third book that I'm writing now is called Superior Relating, on relationships. But back to the Business Tango. It was in the days of my security business, and I was just a young entrepreneur that wanted to prove herself. That was all. I was walking into rooms with like just, you know, businessmen who were double my age, and I had to like prove myself over and over again. So it was, to be completely frank, the book originated as a branding exercise. I just wanted to like brand myself to like, you know, this is what I do. And it's on entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship. And that's what I knew at the time about entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship. Intrapreneurship being an entrepreneur within a business. So that's the experience that I had. I interviewed, I think, like 30 or 35 entrepreneurs to get inspiration of like how to lead people and how to be a better business owner and all of that. So that was a really, like, it was a really powerful exercise. It got me into the world of authorship, but also it's like, it's definitely not like the book that I am leading with today, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. And you've spent, I believe it was like 8 years studying human behavior. So was that like something from university level, or is it just kind of like continuous development that you've kind of realized, obviously this is working well for what you're doing now as well as previously?
Parallel to university, I studied human behavior. So I don't have a degree in psychology or anything like that. So I have a degree, an honors degree in property studies of all things, so like real estate. And so with human behavior, I started going to personal development seminars when I was 18. It's all grateful, like I'm very grateful to my dad actually, who introduced me, because he was super interested in it at the time. And so he'd take me along to these courses. And that kind of like started it. And then I studied under Dr. John DeMartini for about 8 years, and then other modalities from Dr. Joe Dispenza to meditation retreats in India to all sorts of different things that I started to add on. But yeah, I would build the businesses at the same time as like studying in university, and then like going and building businesses and things like that. I would do all these studies on human behavior on the side, and I kind of apply all the principles for my own success, but I wouldn't tell anyone. So I was like this closeted hippie or closeted spiritual person. I didn't really have words for it at the time either. And then after figuring out that building businesses and making the money wasn't bringing me all the success and happiness that I thought it was going to, that's when I went full tilt into human behavior and spirituality and all of that.
Very good. And your own kind of go-to meditation then, with, I mean, the fact that you've been to India and you've tried a load of different things, what do you think serves you best? What type of meditation?
So right now I'm doing a combination of TM, Transcendental Meditation, and Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation. So I do like activation of the 8 energy centers. Are you familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditation?
I've heard of him, yeah. I don't know his meditation, but I've heard of him, yeah.
I really like, so I don't recommend this for anyone who's starting. Please know that I've been like meditating for almost 15 years. So I've managed to like kind of mix and blend my own thing now. For a lot of my students who are just starting, we start with like something simple, either like mantra or breath focus or something like that. But like, right. And for me, it changes. Sometimes I get bored of one certain type of meditation. Like I have a little bit of shiny object syndrome, so I have to be careful, because at one stage I'm doing like Kundalini yoga mantras and this one and that one. So I have to be a little bit careful with that. But the combination that I have now is TM and Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I kind of just do it for about 20 minutes, but in the morning and sometimes in the afternoon. But the most important thing is that I actually unlock the feeling. So if I find that I'm just meditating and just being numb, I continue to meditate. And there's a certain feeling that I unlock, the feeling of like energy, inspiration, gratitude, where I kind of feel like my body and my soul and my spirit like come alive. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm ready for my day. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Versus just like putting 20 minutes on the clock and, you know, whatever happens in those 20 minutes. I've done that as well. This is just where I'm at today, where it's all about like unlocking. And I always like want to make sure that like the purpose of my meditation is to feel good, is to unlock that inspiration and that energy.
And I think a lot of people don't talk about what you just said. And I know from my own journey, I played around with a lot of different things, and I found something that kind of works for me. And it's like, you know, sometimes it's just sitting there in the morning and just kind of thinking, okay, what am I going to do? But I know I'm in total flow, where some people think they learn a certain thing and they stick with that, and it just doesn't feel right. And it's like, you just listen to your body. And when you find, you know, sometimes you're like, okay, the 6-phase meditation, that worked for me, that was brilliant. Then you do it through your own head, and then you try something else, you try just listening to stuff. But once you're in tune with your body, it's okay to change. You don't have to stick that in. You know, we're not a tree. We don't have to stay still. We can move around. Even like when I realized you don't have to close your eyes and try to remain, because most people, unfortunately, they think they need pure silence. Like, you can stand looking at the waves, and that's a form of meditation. There's so many different things you can do, and all you need to do is find what works for you. And as long as you feel good, that works for you. Nobody can tell you, hey, you must do it this way. You can try what they're telling you, but it's like, if it doesn't resonate, don't beat yourself up. Try something else.
Yes, I so resonate with that. And there's times for like discipline and strict meditation. So for example, when I did Vipassana, and that's like 10 days of one type of meditation to kind of like get it through my thick skull of how to do this specific meditation, you know, so that I can use it in the future. And I actually do use elements of Vipassana where I start to imagine myself like disintegrating into the molecules that I am, and then building a new reality of the one that I want. I use elements of that as well. And yeah, whatever works for you. And it depends on your goal, because lots of people also meditate, but it's actually just a form of escape or numbing.
And like, with different events, I mean, we've been to, I think, AFS, we met originally, does like lots of different breath works, and I have maybe 10 different facilitators, and they're all incredible, to be honest. There's very rarely it hasn't worked with me. It's only when they're afraid of actually the audience getting too deep, it kind of annoys me, because I know how good it can feel, and you're sitting there and you're going, I want to go a bit deeper with this. Like, but what kind of breath works have you tried, and is that something that you try to practice often?
I love breath work. I often talk about emotional alchemy and also self-regulation, especially with relationships, right? Like, just emotional alchemy, self-regulation is so important. And breath work is one of the best tools on the planet for that. I've tried lots of different types. I can't even start to begin to tell you. Like, my first breath work was when I was like 18 years old, you know, so I've again molded the one that I do now. I've kind of like found a couple that like work best for me. So the one is like 2-step. So I breathe into my belly, and then breathe into my chest, and then breathe out. And then that's the 2-step that I do. That's super, super powerful. I'll usually put on like a Kundalini mantra or something to like carry me through the practice. And then I'll just do connected breath, like breathe into my tummy, and then out, and then my chest, and then out, and just like play with the different cavities almost. And again, it's about like that feeling and generating that life force, that energy. Like so many of us are walking around like tired and numb, myself included, for many, many years. And just like generating that life force, it's so powerful. And yeah, for the most part these days I do practice myself, but when I do have an opportunity to hop into a breathwork class, I do. I have had also some practitioners that weren't that great, where they leave you at that tingling sensation. They aren't able to like push you through. They just like, there's something that's like missing, and that's not enough. That is the most like frustrating breath work for me. So that's why a lot of the time I just like do my own thing.
Or like if it's a big audience and they're going deep, like there will be releases, and someone screaming next to you can throw you off because you want to go deep, you know, the beautiful things that you can see. Or I don't know, that I remember happened to me once where my hands kind of clawed up, that, and
Yeah.
apparently that's kind of normal as well, but when it happens first you're kind of freaking out, like it's like, what's going on here, you know, that your hands just kind of lock into place. Did that ever happen to you?
It hasn't happened to me personally, but it is normal. And the practitioner honestly should have told you that might happen, type of thing. Because like when it does happen first time, it can be a bit of a shock. But if you just keep breathing, you'll be fine.
So I know you kind of talk about tapping as well. So like, is this something that you practice? Is it something you encourage people, you know, like the EFT tapping? Yeah.
EFT tapping
Emotional
is one of my
frequency.
favorite tools as well. One of the things that I love about it is because I can measure it physically working on my body almost immediately or within 5 minutes, right? So if I'm feeling a sense, let's take a relationship example. If there's like a conflict that is resulting in a tension within me, and I say like, okay, the tension I'm feeling from this conflict is at an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, right? Like this is like physical tension. And then I do the tapping, which is the 9 points, and it's easy to go onto YouTube and just find the 9 points and type of thing. It's based on Chinese traditional medicine, which is one of my favorite modalities, in yoga and then in tapping as well. And then like after doing the tapping for 5 minutes, then I noticed that this tension, this anxiety, or this conflict that I was feeling is now at a 5 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10. So like it's practically physically is working, you know, and that's one of my favorite things about it.
Brilliant. And with the relationship coaching then, because what happens a lot, and what I see with in life, different parenting styles when you have the kids, like different ways of doing it. So how do you resolve that? Because that leads to a lot of conflict when people have a different thought process, how this should be done.
So the first thing is to identify that the enemy is never your partner. It's me and you against the world, or me and you against this issue, right? How to parent, or how to school, or how to X. So that's, I think, is the most important first step, is to be like, we are on the same side, and ultimately we want the same thing. One of my favorite conflict questions in general, whether it's parenting or anything else, is beyond what you and I want, what does love want? You know, so
More
really
children.
identify the health and the love and the, you know, safety of the children, you know, or the best for the kids, right? So we want that, we're on the same page. And then from there, it's about having the communication skills of communicating, you know, how you think the best path is to that common goal, how they think the best path is to the common goal, and why. And the most beautiful thing is that these days we have access to so many communication books, and we can build these skill sets. A lot of the times we look at this like, oh, well, I don't have the skill set to communicate with my partner, like, oh, well, but that's not an excuse anymore. There's coaching, there's podcasts, there's books, there's like upskill yourself. If you find that you're struggling with communication or co-parenting or whatever, find really commit to that and go like, I want to get better at that, you know. So just having those skill set. And then what I like to remember, what I like to remind couples is that once upon a time, when they were like courting each other, for example, they didn't have a problem in communicating. You know, they actually communicated because it was important for them to communicate. And now they've kind of like lost touch or lost that ability because they don't place that importance on it anymore. So it's about going like, yeah, it's really important for us to be on the same side, to find the right solutions, and to help like educate each other, like be curious about the others versus judgment, right? Like it's like, oh, that's wrong, this is right. But like the more I'm like just very, very, very curious about the other person's stance or approach, the more they're going to be curious about mine. Again, like if relationships are mirrors, and if my stance or approach is being like rejected all the time, then I want to ask myself, where am I rejecting them? All right. And that way you start to soften, you start to have more compassion, and then you can have a better conversation about any issue, including parenting.
And with like, there's one kind of famous book on relationships, the 5 love languages, you know, like there's gifts, there's, you know, nice words, you know, just cuddling. And there's probably more that when we go deep down the rabbit hole. And how important is it that you're kind of open and kind of let them know, rather than you should know me and you should understand what I want?
How important is it to let them know? So do you know the book, The 4 Agreements?
Yeah, yeah. And then there's his son has done the 5 agreements. That one, is it? Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite books of all time. And the 2 of those agreements are so within relationships, all 4 can apply. But the first one is never make assumptions. All right. And then the second one is never take anything personally. And if you just apply those 2 things into any conversation, you'll be surprised how easy it is to have a great relationship, you know? So with like, I love how the 5 languages is like so mainstream. I mean, you know, lots of people know about it now, and you can start to understand. It takes conscientiousness and being like open and awake to actually execute it, right? Because like it's so easy to just like, what's the word? It's so easy to be lazy, you know, and just like so someone will assume like what's important to me, and I'll assume what's important to them. But like good healthy relationships, just like having a good healthy business, requires you to sit up, pay attention, and do the work and participate and prioritize it.
Good. And like with the meditation, with everything, you know, the calmness and being in control, like that kind of has an advantage as well, because sometimes somebody has a shitty day, something goes wrong, or they're just, sometimes we get out of the wrong side of the bed. Nobody wakes up every day with a big smile, because, you know, I kind of buyer beware when you see that there's something going on, because I have yet to meet somebody. I get a blues days, you know, maybe 1 or 2 a month, but it does happen, and it happens. I just kind of embrace it. It is what it is. I go watch a comedy or something like that. But what I noticed is, no matter what situation you're in, that when you're able to kind of hold your breath, and even though your mind, and the old me would be, not just me, but, you know, people that are kind of, you can kind of help the situation, that eventually their anger dissipates, and then they kind of realize, hey, and it never spirals, because what unfortunately usually happens is you say something, you hurt me, then I say something about, say, your mother, and then you say something about my child, and and before you know it, we're both ripping each other's heads off. But like, I think like the reality is, no matter what situation you're in, it's kind of grow yourself as much as you can, because the stronger that you are, the better situations that you will actually create.
Yes, I love what you said there. It's all comes down. That's why at the Relating Academy, we really teach about healthy relationships from the inside out. It's not about like that other person out there. It's about, no, what is your reaction to that reaction? You know, like how do you get better? And something that really describes super well, like how to get to this place where you can be less reactive is what I called the Frankl pause. So Viktor Frankl, in his book Man's Search for Meaning, wrote that your freedom lies in the space between stimulus and reaction. The quote is obviously a little bit different. So in that space, so there's a stimulus and then you want to react, and the old you would have reacted like that, right? But now the new you, with your meditation practices, the new you is able to put in a little bit more space between that stimulus and that reaction, so that next time you can think, do I really want to react that way? What's the consequence of reacting that way? Is there a different way I'd prefer to react? What does the new me react and do in the situation? And so the more we can live in that kind of like conscientious Viktor Frankl, the Frankl pause, the more you are in control of the type of person you want to be in the relationship, the types of behaviors and actions that you want to portray and have. And that will then play a huge influence on how your relationship looks like.
And I think with like anything in life, if we embrace it and start studying. So if I look at different things that I've done, like for example, I hated public speaking, and then I just went deep in, read books, started studying it, started doing it, started practicing, overcame that. Like when I became a parent, I started reading books on how to be a good parent, what to do, with work environments or even in relationships. Normally I wouldn't be the type that would explode. I'd be just letting it build up, but then I'd go white, and I didn't like that. So I started reading books on anger, and I took that out of and it's like anything I do, I realize the flaw that I've got. I don't blame anybody, accuse, oh, you made me angry, you made me this, you made me that. It's like, I made me angry, because if I can keep calm, it doesn't happen. And I think most people, we have to kind of accept responsibility for ourselves and stop blaming anybody. And there's so much material out there that you, like even in the relationships, you can do loads of books, get the coaching, obviously, and just accept it. Whereas instead of just chugging through life, because unfortunately, there's so many people that are in relationships and they kind of say, we're just together because of the kids, or we're just doing this, or does financially they can't part. Instead of saying, let's make this work. We fell in love. We were mad about each other. If we had that, why can't we get that again? Why do we have to actually go through a hate process? And when you're conscious to make your life better, you actually will.
That is so powerful. And it's interesting that you say that. Today is actually my parents' 37th anniversary. So 37 years ago today, they got married. Lovely. And my parents went through incredibly difficult decades. So it wasn't a couple years that, they were fighting or whatever, but like throughout most of my childhood, and I say this with so much love, and I'm so glad they didn't, but I, as a child, really wished they would separate, because it was just, there was so much tension and it was so difficult for them. My mom and dad are very different people. And to witness them to come through to the other side of that, and the type of companionship and love that they have now. And I feel very, very blessed to have witnessed that deep of a struggle. And, my mom actually shared with me how one day she really, really just committed, and she's like, I'm staying, I'm going to make this work, and if you really make that, like, I'm staying, I'm going to find a way to make this work, then that hatred, or not the hatred, but like that severe tension almost has to go away, because you can't live like that. You can't, if that's a commitment for decades or for your lifetime, whatever, like if you're gonna hold on to that, you're gonna make yourself sick. All right. So as soon as you really start to make that commitment, a lot of that starts to dissipate. And there's lots of incredibly challenging and difficult relationships. Relationships are here to teach us, first and foremost. They're not here to make us happy. They can be at certain times, but primarily we're here to evolve, and relationships are one of our greatest tools to do that. And like you say, we have so much access to learn about, about relationships, ourselves, all of these things, that when we make it important, then it starts to change, it starts to shift.
And I mean, you mentioned your parents. Like my father died in May this year, but they were 50 years married, and are like same thing. They went through the same kind of roller coaster. And I actually said it at the funeral. It was like I thought that once we moved out of the house, that they'd actually get divorced. And I said I realized I was the problem because I never saw them so close together afterwards. You know, it was actually incredible. They went on holidays. They used to go with friends, and then they said they preferred going themselves. They go for walks, and I've never seen, like, it just shows most people think there's no hope. And when you see something like that, it was like they had such an incredible relationship together. And I've seen it with others as well. Whereas most people say, no, this isn't working, throw in the towel. So the reality is everything is retrievable.
It really is. It really is, especially when you start to take that radical responsibility and you start to work on yourself, then anything is possible. Anything is possible.
Fantastic. Listen, Anna, thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. You might let people know where they can find you.
Yes, of course. It's on relatingacademy.com. All of our information is on there. And then my Instagram is really the best place to find me. So at Anna Shilina. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Anna. I'll make sure I'll put the links both on the audio and the video.
Okay. So, thank you, Roy. I really, really enjoyed this chat today.
No problem. So that's all for the Meditation Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on meditationpodcast.org. Until next week, take care.
So I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. You'll find everything about me on bio.link/podcaster with all my podcasts, and you'll find it, you see in the QR code in the graphic that's shown. I'd like again to thank my sponsors. So if you or someone you know struggling with anxiety and want to know how to be 100% anxiety free in 6 weeks without therapy or drugs, Daniel Packard's Anxiety Solution Program company offers a 6-week system that permanently solves anxiety at an astounding 90% success rate. People who join the program only pay at the end once they have clear, measurable results. If you're interested in learning more, go to permanentanxietysolutions.com, where you can book a free consultation with Daniel. Do you fight blood pressure and or want to get off the meds? Doctors are amazed at what Zona Plus can do. You can get a $50 discount with my code ROY, zona.com/discount/ROY. And you'll see it in the QR code as well as Daniel's QR code. Quality manufacturer of metal products for telecommunication and workshop equipment and other metal materials. You see the brochure there in the QR code, and let me know if you would like a quotation, shipped internationally at very competitive price. I'd like to thank all my sponsors and also all my listeners. Be sure to give me a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends, really helps. And I also have a video on how to give a 5-star rating because a lot of people have wrote to me asking me that they don't know how to do that. Until next week, take care.